I don't know if I would call this a fond memory, but one of the more memorable things about the Burning Crusade was me and this little guild that I was running. We were farming for this thing called the Frozen Shadow Weave. It was like this 3-piece crafted thing for tailoring for my warlock at the time. So I was farming this lake, and I was killing everyone inside because I was like, no, dude, these motes of water, this is all mine. And everyone else was farming for cloth. Those were the two main components of it. So eventually we got the set together, and I put it on, and it felt awesome because I was getting like life leech or something like that. And it felt cool because we all banded together. We worked really hard, and we made this thing. And I know that there were players that are like, oh, well, that's when it was the real WoW, when we had to work really hard to make stuff. But at the same time, I think back then when I was still a very inexperienced player. I don't know how to make gold, because if I did, then I would have been able to easily make these pieces of armor just by, buying and selling and stuff like that. So I look back on that and I appreciate not just how the game has changed over time, which has all sorts of mixed feelings behind it, but I think of how I've grown as a player, how I've grown to be a little bit more sophisticated, and how these days making money is trivial, not because, there's mission tables or whatnot, but because I've just gotten smarter about spending money and being able to make it. So that's something I look back on and I appreciate. Hello everyone, this is Sold. It is January 18th, 2019. This is Warcraft Weekly, and today's episode is brought to you by all of these lovely people right over there. And there are a lot more of you to appreciate at the end of the episode, so keep an eye out for that. So don't worry, you get your own little shout out. I encourage you to subscribe if you're new here and you happen to enjoy the commentary, the content, the failed attempts at humor and such, so I can keep giving you more of this and all things Warcraft. Now let me fix the camera. We have a couple things to go over. There's a crash course on what to expect with a new season coming in next Tuesday, the Season 2 of Battle for Azeroth. There's a couple of collectible Blizzard books that are coming out in the next couple, I don't know actually, and I'm going to give you a kind of indirect preview of what's possible to see in at least one of these books. I'm also going to elaborate on my thoughts on this so-called Season 2 of BFA and the weird relationship that it has with patch releases. Okay, I can't even imagine where Bob is right now. Bob, where are you?
I'm over at the precipice of destruction.
Yeah, it looks really exotic and colorful in there. And hey, I see you have, I think that's a friend?
Yes, she has been oh so helpful with taking me on the tour and revealing the truth.
The truth about what? Is this like some trivia sort of stuff?
No, apparently you're blind to the grand design. She's telling me that you should come over and learn about the Hour of Twilight.
So anyway, next week, January 22nd, is Season 2 of the Battle for Azeroth, the Tides of Vengeance, the second tier. I don't know what to call it. There is kind of a lot going on, so much so that game director Ian Hazzikostas put up a pretty lengthy blog post that details all the changes and all the different little things that are going on, just to make sure that there are as few questions as possible come Tuesday. I invite you to take a look at the link somewhere down below so you can read everything for yourself, but if I were to summarize everything, I guess it would go like this. Here's what is not changing in Season 2 of Battle for Azeroth, so maybe you can just kind of forget about some of this content, or at least tell yourself that, hey, aside from my alts or new characters that I make, maybe I can leave this stuff behind. The original 8.0 world bosses, the Arathi Warfront, and the Uldir Raid, the gear that you're going to get from that, it's not going to be updated at all. Almost all other content is going to scale up in both difficulty as well as reward, and that includes the global Titan Forge cap. So anything that isn't a weapon or Azerite gear, that's going to have a chance to Titan Forge all the way up to 425. So I guess going back to what I had said previously about the Warfronts and Uldir and all that stuff, I mean, there's a wildcard chance that that stuff can Titan Forge, but I'm not going to recommend that you go back and do that stuff for the sake of hope. Another important thing to point out is that random rewards that you get, like the random loot boxes that you'll get from like emissary chests or the Warfront, that stuff is now going to be based on whatever your loot specialization is, because apparently it wasn't I guess I never noticed. Artifact knowledge is going to resume, but keep in mind, it's not going to be like back pay. It's the artifact knowledge is not going to suddenly jump up like 5 or 7, however many weeks that we missed. It's simply going to resume, at least for a while. New profession reagents are going to start dropping from dungeons and raids in the new season, and a lot of that stuff can make some, pretty decent pieces of gear. So check your profession tab to check out what's good. For all you Mythic Plus people, and I hope I'm right about this, there is not going to be a kind of mini exploit where if you do a 10 now, you're going to get really good stuff next week, as in the first week of the season. You'll need to complete a 10 next week in order to get the good stuff. So I only have like a few minor tips, especially if you feel as if you're hurting for Heart of Azeroth levels. If you're watching this video early enough, but I have no doubt that you probably watched a whole bunch of other prep videos before this, I recommend holding on to most of your turn-ins. That's going to include the Island Expedition boat mission, whatever emissary quests that are available, the Paragon chest, just hold on to all that stuff. But keep in mind that because knowledge is going to be a thing again, I suggest not putting too much extra effort to get caught up, at least, after the season starts and you do these turn-ins. Don't worry too much about grinding away, unless, of course, you're a competitive PvPer or raider. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm not going to change my normal habits. I'm going to, do some of this prep, but I'm not going to totally alter my playstyle just so I can get caught up. And in fact, it's paid off because once this new season starts next week, I'll be able to access pretty much all the traits that I care about from whatever gear that I get, if I happen to get it. Here's another thing, but don't take my word for it. Even after the season starts, I'm going to kind of cautiously wait until I do these turn-ins, because you never know. There might be some sort of change. There might be bugs or issues that might happen because it might happen. So just hold on to that stuff. Don't jump the gun too early. You might regret it. And that about summarizes it. Just Tuesday's going to come. You're going to get more stuff for the things that you do. Things are going to feel a little bit tougher, maybe. The new raid is going to open up. There are going to be absolutely no problems. Everyone's going to be happy. The MAUs are going to be through the roof. And oh my goodness, and Blizzard's going to break free of Activision? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. There are a number of books, 4 of them, that are going to be coming in the fall of this year. Fall is so far away. Why are they talking about this now? But anyway, there are going to be a number of books. One of them is going to be about Hearthstone. Cool. Another one's going to be about Diablo. That's kind of cool. Another one's going to be about Warcraft cinematics, as in the really hardcore cinematics, which I find that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'd love to see some of the behind-the-scene concept art, as well as interviews and other such things. Those kinds of things get me all geeked out and really interested. There's also going to be a pop-up book for Warcraft based on the current climate in this Battle for Azeroth timeline, and I'm weirded out by it because I'm not a big pop-up person. Let me read the description from their announcement.
Built by best-selling paper engineer Matthew Reinhardt, the World of Warcraft pop-up book brings the beloved locations of Warcraft to life, from the classic faction hubs of Orgrimmar and Stormwind to the battle-scarred lands of Lordaeron and Tel Drazzle, and even the new capital cities of Kultiris and Zandalar. Magic fingers.
So the description describes the classic faction hubs of Orgrimmar and Stormwind. So are we talking about pre-Cataclysm or pre-Legion stuff? Because, the capitals have evolved since then. There's a bit of battle going on in my head between, hey, the nostalgia of the old stuff or the grand spectacle of what's new. Because, I would argue, this is going to be controversial, I would argue that looks-wise and aesthetically, the new stuff just straight up looks better than the old stuff. But they're also talking about the battle-scarred lands of Lordaeron and Teldrassil. I feel bad for Alliance players. Horde bias, here we go, because the Undercity is all it's nuked. It's green, it's gross, it's partially on fire and whatnot, but it's kind of intact. However, Teldrassil it's less than a shadow of what it once was. It's kind of messed up. It's do I really want to open up this book? And see just falling embers and stuff. That sucks. Or some of you just might be a pop-up book. who gives a f about a pop-up book? So I decided to take a look at this person, Matthew Reinhardt, and what kind of work that he's done. So I'm going to show a clip from the Best PopUp Books channel featuring some of Matthew Reinhardt's work on the Harry Potter pop-up book. Let's take a look. So this has me pretty excited. This would make this book a really cool thing to have on your coffee table, as long as you don't have like little ass kids that are going to totally mess everything up. But this little indirect preview has me legit pretty excited about what this new pop-up book is going to feature. So I'll be happy to share with you when when I finally get my mitts on it. I'll do a quick like, oh, take a look at this, guys, it's so awesome. All right, let's move on to the final item of this week, the launch of season 2, and how it's how it kind of pisses me off that we're seeing this whole, hey, here's season 2, but then like a couple weeks ago, or a month and some change ago, we had the patch come out. I've been expressing my dissatisfaction over this weird alignment, or this, the way that these announcements for the patch and the season, how they're considered separate. It does weird things to the whole hype machine that we are kind of accustomed to from like previous expansions and patches and such. Yesterday, you might have seen that there was a survival guide part 2. Someone had notified me on, while I was streaming, hey, so they did a part 2 of the survival guide. I'm like, okay, let's take a look. And I couldn't help but just rip into it. Partially because I like ripping into the survival guides. I just like making fun of them. But the other part was, there's a part 2? This is a survival guide. This is supposed to get us prepared for things that are going on. Why do we need a part 2? So I don't know. Maybe I felt a little bit more visceral when I was doing my satire of the survival guide. Go ahead and take a look. It's not very long, haha. But I want to take a few minutes, which is going to be like 10 or 20 minutes, to talk about the difference between the patch launch, the season launch, and what, the weirdness that it is now, in my opinion, and what can be done later, because this is a really nuanced, a nuanced deal. I tried to think about what could be done better, and it's pretty tough. So, well, let's go. The 8.1 patch entitled Tides of Vengeance opened up on December 11th of 2018, so that's going to be a little over a month ago. The patch was preceded with a little bit of hype, some fanfare, a trailer, a title, they called it Tides of Vengeance, and with it came coverage from Wowhead, from personalities such as me, and we talked about the things that were coming in Stage 1, and what was probably going to come in Stage 2. Already it's a little bit weird because Blizzard was giving both the patch and the season kind of like their equal time in the sun, as if, there are big changes coming in this patch and there are big changes coming when the season starts. So let's help control where you're supposed to be excited about and when. So from observations, it looks like you needed a lot of leading in order to understand everything that was going to happen on December 11th. And you need to understand what's going on January 22nd, because if that becomes unaligned, you become very, very confused. I mean, there are still people who are confused as to, hey, so allied races, they're coming like after the raid, right? Like after that? No, it's not. It's not going to come until 8.15. So that's kind of a separate thing with talking about stuff that's come from BlizzCon and hyping that stuff up. It's just confusing, all right? The biggest problem that I have with separating the patch from the season is the gap. It's over a month. That leaves for a lot of weeks for people to be waiting. It's like, cool, the patch came out, so when's the good stuff happening? And that comes from history. Players are still used to seeing patches be like the big thing when massive changes happen, new content is revealed, and there was new stuff that came in on December 11th, but it just wasn't nearly everything. And we're going to feel a bit of jarring again because next week things are going to be changed up. So why is Blizzard doing this anyway? Other than, oh my god, it's to increase the MAUs and keep people from, keep people subscribed and playing the game. Oh, the evil! It's all about the pacing. I think that Blizzard is defining the World of Warcraft timeline not through patches, but by seasons. The patches are there to lay the groundwork for what's going to happen in the season, but at the same time, you can't tie a season to big class changes. Those are things that are just going to happen. You can't just switch that on and off. That's what patches are for. However, when they do get the patch out, does that necessarily mean that the raid, the new raid and season and all that stuff should start right away? It's Blizzard's opinion, or at least it seems to be Blizzard's opinion, that it's just too soon. There are still people who are progressing through Uldir, and it wouldn't feel right to launch the new season or tier, or whatever you want to call it, too early. It would make those players feel like pretty doo-doo butter. I've seen conversations on forums and elsewhere that, well, you know, maybe when the patch launches, maybe some content can be launched early before the season starts or something like that. So, like, let's say let's separate the PvP season from everything else like we did before. But that doesn't feel very good, because if you launch the PvP season separately, that's going to mean, especially with the way itemization works now in BFA, that you can farm the crap out of like Mythic Pluses and raids and whatnot, so that by the time the PvP season does start, don't you just kind of outgear all that stuff anyway? So it messes with the reward structure of PvPs and arenas. So that's another very, very important thing: consistency. They want to try, Blizzard wants to try and make it so that not one piece of content will make players feel more advantageous if it were to come out right when the patch opens up and before the season starts. So, like, taken with what we have now, patch 8.1 launched, we got the new Warfront right away. Hey, that's pretty cool. But the item level was given that lower cap. It was given that cap of 385 or whatever it was. And next week, it's going to go up a little bit because the Darkshore Warfront is considered Season 2 content. That seems to be one of the exceptions that Blizzard made. It's like, okay, we'll take this and we'll nerf the content because it's not very frequent stuff and you can't necessarily farm the crap out of it. Okay, you can, but you know what I mean, right? Maybe, and I'm getting into really speculative territory here, maybe it's just the timing because of the holidays, because Christmas was coming up, that maybe Blizzard could have pushed the patch back until January or so. And that way, the gap between patch and season launch would be that much smaller. It'd only be like maybe 2 or 3 weeks as opposed to many more weeks. But there are some opposing thoughts here that come to mind. So let's say we did hold off until next year or so. That time between early December and Christmas, that makes for, you know, quite a bit of downtime, and that makes for, you know, during the holiday break, a lot of players that are just like bored. It's like, okay, I've done everything that I needed to do, what the content's done, and yada yada yada. Maybe the risk of player drop-off would be too great. And so Blizzard's like, hey, you know what, let's put this out a little bit earlier so that way people have something to enjoy during the holiday season. I'm thinking that in hindsight, and keep in mind, this is just my opinion, I think they should have held off the patch until early January, so that way that gap would be like a little bit smaller. So that way there would only be like one survival guide, and the communication to players wouldn't have to be doubled in an effort to control the conversation or to manage expectations. Because right now, it feels like there are still a lot of players that are confused as to what's going on. The biggest takeaway, though, that I strongly recommend for Blizzard, though, is if they are going to go all in with the idea of seasons becoming the separator between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so on and so forth, if they're just going to replace tiers with seasons, then they should just totally forget about the patch. Don't hype up the patch at all. No fanfare, no title, nothing like that. That reminds me of 7.2 when that came out, where 7.2, oh, Tuma Sargeras, this is it. But when we didn't get into the Tuma Sargeras for another like 3 months or so. I think that when it comes to patches, all that's needed are like a couple of little blog posts to talk about, hey, this is what's going to happen in the new patch, these are the new features, class changes, and other things like that. But this is more like a soft launch. This is prep. This is laying the groundwork for the
upcoming season that's coming. Oh, it's season 3, such and such, whatever.
Butter. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if they are going to separate patches and seasons, concentrate the hype onto one thing. That way, the message stays on point. It's clear. It's easy to understand. You only have to give it once. That's very, very helpful. And I think that wraps up the news. Hey, how about that? All right, time for free talk. Woohoo! Just to keep some of you folks updated if you didn't hear from me over on stream or whatnot, I'm feeling better. Cool. After last week's migraine, I just had a lot of rest, relaxed a little bit, and then I was back up and running. So I'm feeling good this week. So thank you to those of you who had expressed your concern. I very, very much appreciate the positive energy. I always love that. I am trying to think about when I'm going to do another like a mini marathon stream. I did one last year in the month of January. For the ASPCA. I did a stream for, I think it was, shucks, I don't know if it was 9 hours or 12 hours. I don't last that long, by the way. But I did a stream, made a couple $100 for the ASPCA for all the puppies, because I thought it'd be awesome, and it was pretty successful. I was quite happy with it. So I want to do it again. I'm tempted to probably wait until patch 8.15 comes out, so that way I can make a Zandalari troll and start going through the content and see how long I last there. But I don't know. Maybe I should do it sooner. I'm still kind of on the fence about that. So I'm hyped. I'm excited to get to a new raid. I'm excited to finally say goodbye to Uldir and the ball passing things and Fetid Devourer doing that weird walk and all that, even though that was kind of cool. It was really fun to make fun of, whatever. But I'm more than eager to jump into the new raid, to hope and pray that I get that cool mount, or if anything, to get this goblet looking thing. I want that. It literally drips gold when you're holding it, and I think that's kind of my flavor. I think I would like that a lot. So stay tuned for next week. That's when I'm going to do my typical, hey, here's my guild jumping into the raid for the first time. Let's get some candid reactions from them, or from all of us as we're encountering these new bosses and all that for the first time. It tends to be fairly entertaining. So please give that a watch when that comes out next week. But yes, let's rest, relax, and get prepared as the Tides of Vengeance finally starts, I guess. So stay tuned for more content. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more of this and all things Warcraft, and we will see you later. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.